Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, nationally, is Obama on the ballot, and will it hurt Democrats in the Senate? Locally, is the governor's race a referendum on Martin O'Malley? The race for county executive, that's right, despite the lack of media coverage, there is a race for county executive. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give the story behind the story. We're joined by Maryland National Committee woman Nicolee Ambrose, education activist Cynthia Rubenstein, and Republican activist Jerry Cave. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Hello and welcome back. Trending, what an interesting term. 30 years ago, a trend was usually a fashion statement that could last several years. Today, with the advent of modern technology, everything and anything can be a trend and over in the blink of an eye. Political observers are desperate to predict and forecast the next trend. So the topic for the next 3 weeks is whether President Barack Obama is trending positive or negative, and how will his performance influence congressional elections, particularly in the U.S. Senate. There is no better example of that than in the Kentucky race for the U.S. Senate, where the Democratic candidate, Allison Grimes, danced around whether or not she voted for President Obama in the 2012 election. Nicolee, in Kentucky, President Obama seems to be trending down. What impact will President Obama have on this year's election?
Oh, I think he's absolutely on the ballot. This is a referendum on how unsuccessful his presidency has been. And I think the foremost issue that all Americans are concerned about, regardless of party affiliation, is, are we safe, right? The commander-in-chief's number one job is to protect us. We have a 54-year-old woman beheaded in Oklahoma. We have a pandemic that's totally out of control because we haven't taken proper precautions that we have known about since the beginning of the 20th century with quarantining people regarding Ebola. National security-wise, whether it was the Syrian red line that's allowed everything else to go out of control, this is a failed presidency, and Democrats elected to the United States Senate will only enable, not stop it. So,
no. We gotta let other people in here, Nicolee. Cynthia, picking up on Nicolee's point, President Obama's ratings are not great, but generally American people are reluctant to make changes when they perceive that there are external threats to the country. So is it possible that if the threat from ISIS and Ebola epidemic doesn't worsen and President Obama demonstrates leadership and command, that it actually will be a positive for Democrats in November?
Marginally so, perhaps, if his ratings inch up. But he's not waiting for that. I mean, right now, Mrs. Obama is on the campaign trail helping Democrats in states where she is more popular than her husband. She's in Iowa today helping to improve the chances for Bruce Braley in his race.
But the president is still out campaigning and raising lots of money for Democratic candidates.
Yes, he is.
So there's still he's still a net asset to the party. Jerry, for the past 6 years, you've been like, well, Chicken Little, saying that the sky is falling, that everything is bad about the Obama administration. Is that still your message?
You know, you got to stop putting words in my mouth. I never said the sky is falling, but I was right on everything else. Foreign policy and domestic policy is a nightmare, and past performance is an indicator of future results. And Obama has elected more Republicans than anybody since Abraham Lincoln. He elected them in the House.
Jerry.
He elected them in the in the governorships, the state houses, and he's going to give them the Senate.
We're in the 6th year of a presidency.
And
there's always some presidential fatigue at this time of the year. It's not fair to say that this is all the president's fault.
Yes, it is, because it is all the president's fault, and we don't have enough time in the show. Nicolee just touched on a few of the things that have gone wrong. It's endless.
All right.
The Middle East.
Cynthia, let's explain to Jerry and Nicolee why the Democrats are going to hold on to the Senate, because all of those disputed races with incumbents are going to go toward the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I think they likely will. And every race is unique. For instance, well, let's just take the Iowa race, Bruce Braley and Joni Ernst. If millennials come out to vote, women come out to vote, Bruce Braley will win. Joni Ernst is running close to him, but he stands for the bedrock Democratic principles, and Iowa tends to go a little bit more Democratic than Republican.
You know, I think you guys are really counting your chickens before the eggs are hatched. North Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas, and Louisiana could all go to the Democratic Party.
Let me
Why
give you
why do
examples.
you think it's not going to change?
Absolutely.
Nicolee.
Here are my key examples. First of all, we have great candidates. Joni Ernst in Iowa, amazing candidate. She's military. She's out there working hard. She hog ties pigs herself. She is an activist, and she's running for office with real world experience, knowing how all of these horrible policies hold Americans back. Then add on top of it women. Women voters are polling pretty equal in their support for Republican candidates this year. I think women voters are always the key to it, and they are supportive of Republicans because they know A, we keep them safe, B, we will keep their costs down, and C, we will make their lives
But
more
you're
livable.
missing the biggest point.
This is the problem
These
you
are Democratic
Republicans have.
seats. These are Democratic seats in red states. And when they go Republican this time,
Well, you
they're
know,
going to stay
God,
Republican.
this is the
You're
problem
never
with
going to
you- this
see
is the problem
Democrats in
with you
Louisiana
Republicans.
again or Arkansas.
You believe your own polling data. If your polling
This
data,
isn't our data.
if
we'll
your
see
polling
what
data,
the
Wall Street
if your
Journal
polling
today.
data was correct, Mitt Romney would be president. You
No.
totally guys are wrong, Cynthia.
And one other important piece of the electorate is the millennials who are voting. And the Obama administration and Democrats are really getting the word out to them because they are much more skewed to Democratic principles and the Democratic Party. And that is where the Democrats need to tap the electorate.
And you know, your
completely
voter
counter.
suppression is going to fail. I mean, just recently there was
You are so bad
was
today.
Only a lawyer could say that with a straight
there
face.
was a court case that said that voter ID suppressed the vote of minorities. You guys really are not
You
going to
have
get
to
away
have
with
a
it this
voter
time.
ID in India, and those people are so poor, it's unbelievable. To say that having an ID to vote
but the
is voter
GAO,
suppression
the
or
GAO,
racist
the
is
GAO
out and out
report
falsehood.
on voting in 2 states said that that voter ID suppressed minority
The
voting.
law is going to go into effect in South Carolina this time, and it's going to be the biggest nightmare for Democrats because they're going to see an undervote, and it's all going to be because their illegals can't vote.
And we need to get back to Cynthia's point about millennials. Millennials are sick of being lied to by President Obama, and I find them much more libertarian than Democrat and
But-
All right, we're going to have to cut this off. We got 3
And
weeks.
libertarian and
we got
unemployed.
we got 3 weeks before the election. We're going to see how big an impact the president's going to have on these national races. When we come back from this short break, will Maryland's governor's race be a referendum on the outgoing governor, Martin O'Malley? Stay tuned.
In 1977, in Johannesburg, South Africa, an 8-year-old boy picked up the game of golf from his father. By the age of 9, he was already outplaying him. The odds of this gentle lad winning the Junior World Golf Championships at the age of 14, 1 in 16 million. The odds of that same boy then making it to the US and European Pro Golf Tours, 1 in 7 million. The odds of the Big Easy winning the Open Championship once and the US Open Championship twice, 1 in 780 million. The odds of this professional golfer having a child diagnosed with autism, 1 in 88. Ernie Els encourages you to learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference.
And welcome back. Have you ever noticed during an election campaign that what is not said is as important as what is being talked about? Now, that certainly was the case this week as Democratic candidate Anthony Brown and Republican Larry Hogan squared off in their first debate, where neither of the two debate moderators questioned the lieutenant governor about the botched rollout of the Maryland health care exchange or Governor O'Malley's tax policies. Now, for the disgruntled, this was just seen as a major blunder. But for the faithful, it was a so what moment. Who cares? Cynthia, polls suggest that Lieutenant Governor Brown might be in trouble.
I don't think he's in trouble, but I do think that he wants to have more than a weak or mild mandate from the electorate come the November election. He wants a strong mandate. So what he has to do is a tricky act. He has to differentiate himself from Martin O'Malley, and he has to run on issues where Martin O'Malley is not seen favorably by the electorate. And those two issues are economy and jobs and taxes. And so he has started to move himself into that arena of saying he's the pragmatic, pro-business, and also, as we heard this week, no new taxes, Anthony Brown.
Thank you. Now, Nicolee, let's play what if. What if the thought is Anthony Brown is going to lose to Larry Hogan, it seems like an implausible dream. I mean, Larry Hogan doesn't have much of a political resume, and we are talking about Maryland, the bluest of Democratic blue. So tell me how Larry Hogan is going to win this election.
I think Larry Hogan is actually very well aligned with the Maryland electorate in that even Maryland Democrats are generally very fiscally conservative. I don't really know many who say, oh, give me more taxes. And we've had 40 consecutive tax increases over the past 7 years, right? And Brown is O'Malley's hand-picked successor. And the two things Brown was in charge of was economic development and healthcare, right? He blew $261 million on healthcare and couldn't even get a website to work, and we're now 49th out of 50 states in economic development. So it's remarkable that he's running for promotion. And conversely, Larry Hogan is sitting there saying, guess what? I'm going to lower your taxes. I'm going to get rid of the rain tax. I'm going to make sure we don't have the 5th highest gas taxes in the nation. Let's lower some of these other 38 taxes as well. So I think he's running on a great message for Marylanders.
That's a great academic theory. The problem is, and Jerry, I'm going to ask you about this, it's surprising there's no passion by the electorate in this case. Nobody really cares, and you've got a huge advantage of voter registration for the Democrats. What are you guys thinking?
You're completely wrong about no voter passion. The Republicans are very passionate. But you were on to something earlier. The most insidious power of the press is the power to ignore. And those moderators not asking those questions, it's the same problem this state's had forever. The Washington Toast and the Baltimore Pun ignore what's going on, and that's why you have Democrats getting reelected. But the real trick, and you heard it here first, is the Blarney conspiracy. O'Malley and Hogan were drinking in Annapolis 15 years ago. O'Malley says, I'm going to get elected. I'm going to be so bad that even you can get elected after me. And see if it doesn't happen next month.
Well, that's a great idea, and it's wonderful that it may have happened.
It's an expose. I gave it to you, Casey.
Oh my gosh! Alert the media. Let's tweet about this. But Jerry, the fact of the matter is, we're talking about Democrat blue Maryland.
There's some real problems.
And the electorate doesn't engage in Democrat blue Maryland until the week before the election because they don't have to.
But their pocketbooks have been punished for 8 years now. The only question it comes down to, has this state brought in more people that want free stuff or freedom? And you know what? We'll find that out on election day.
You know, Cynthia, these guys are living in Never Never Land because the Maryland electorate hasn't shown that they are fed up with the policies of the Democratic Party. They like what the governor's been doing.
They have. They do have criticisms, though, over the tax issue. However, they like what he's done with the environment. They like what he's done with investing in education. A majority of Marylanders like the gun control laws that were passed, and they also like marriage equality. So those are 4 issues that have been lost in this whole argument about how terrible Martin O'Malley is.
How good can O'Malley be on the environment when the Chesapeake Bay Foundation can't find any water they grade above a C-? We're primarily responsible for the largest, most important estuary in America, and O'Malley and the Democrats have had absolute power in this state for 100 years. How does that constitute being the party of the environment? Take your time.
Well, if the Republicans in the state legislature hadn't thwarted all of his plans, there would be lots of
those 5 votes.
You're funny, Casey.
You're trying to dodge the issue.
We cannot even sustain a filibuster in the General Assembly because there are not enough Republicans. So
They've
that would be a cue that This state has been Democrat since the Civil War. It's never been Republican. The only problem with Maryland is politics, and it's a Democrat monopoly. So if people would like a true two-party system, vote Republican so you actually have a choice, and we don't get 40 more tax increases in the next 7 years.
You know, it's great. I'm glad you have a message. I hope it connects with the electorate, because it would be nice to see a competitive race in the state of Maryland once again. We have another race we have to talk about, and that's the race right here in Montgomery County. Elections in Montgomery County have been so dominated by the Democratic Party for the past 10 years that many think that last June's primary settled everything. Yet valiantly, Republican candidate Jim Shalek is continuing to campaign for county executive, running against incumbent Isaiah Leggett, who's seeking his third term in office. Shalek, who's a friend of the show and a regular panelist, continues to run, hoping that a platform focused on crime, traffic, and the lackluster economy will appeal to the silent majority of Montgomery County voters that have felt ignored by the powerful Democratic coalition of community activists and the teachers union. Jerry, when you ran for office in 2010, you were hoping to tap into that same disaffected voters. Do you think there's enough of them to overcome the advantage that the current county executive, Ike Leggett, has in this race?
Nobody knows who Jim Shalek is, and nobody knows who Ike Leggett is. This county is inhabited by the smartest but most ignorant people of local politics. If you ask 100 of them who Ike Leggett is, 5 of them won't be able to tell you who he is. Let me finish, because this is a point that I actually know something about, Casey. They don't pay attention to local politics. They only vote the brand, and it's Democrat or Republican. And it doesn't make any difference what you put in front of them, because again, the press doesn't present these issues, and that's the problem in the county. They're only voting for the brand.
Well, I'm going to challenge you on this, Jerry, because there was a very competitive primary race where there were 2 other Democratic challengers.
It's within the brand.
And there was a lot of attention and focus that was paid on that race. And Mr. Leggett won that race going away. So I think you're overstating
Casey,
your case.
you understand.
I want to go to Cynthia on this.
Democrat or Republican?
Cynthia, you're a tried and true Democrat activist. What do you think of this is going to happen in this race?
Ike Leggett's going to win, but I have to say I have sat in on some of the forums with Ike Leggett, well, during the primary season, and with Jim at the podium, and he is a happy warrior, and he's genuinely refreshing and genuine on the campaign trail. He's got some really interesting and good ideas about public safety, about getting rid of all the trailers that we have around our schools. But he doesn't have a chance in this election. But you know, it's great to see him campaigning and running, because he's a terrific candidate.
Nicolee, do you have a different point of view?
Yeah, so Cynthia mentioned the trailers. That you have 10,000 Montgomery County school children in trailers. You've got a rain tax, you've got a bag tax, you've got all these problems, on and on and on. And then people sit here and wonder why you have a historically low voter turnout, 20% or less. Of course, you have 0 elected Republicans. There's been nothing to vote for because you've got such a monopoly here in this county. So Jim is a great candidate. We are so lucky to have him running, and I just encourage everyone to really look into him. I think it would be hard to disagree with anything he's running on and standing for, because who's against children and being in classrooms and public safety?
But here's the issue. The issue is the voter and the electorate of Montgomery County seems pretty content and happy with the government that they have. And, you know, Republican Howie Dennis used to say, you know, we love our services. We hate the taxes that we have to pay to get them, but we love the services.
An example
and that's really what Montgomery County residents are all about. They love the government that they're getting.
Well, if you consider an example of service, blowing $120 million on your Silver Spring transit stop that can't even hold the weight of a bus, vote for services like that. But I would suggest you need a 2-party system.
There's a lot of people unhappy. When I was on the campaign trail 4 years ago, people were screaming about their kids going to school in trailers, which is unsafe and inexcusable. They had 8 trailers behind Woodacres, which is where I grew up. but they still vote Democratic because they're married to the brand. You can't come in every 4 years and for 2 weeks present something, because these are people that are living off the government, either because they work for it or they're contractors or that type of thing, and they're just married to the brand. You can't change that in 2, 3, or 6 weeks of campaigning.
Well, but the issue is,
And they don't even know who they're voting for. I had a survey that showed less than 3% of the people surveyed could name 2 elected officials out of Montgomery County.
Well, that goes more to the fact that we still are inhabited by people who often don't think of themselves, number one, as Marylanders or Montgomery Countyans. They think their mindset is really more DC centric, and if they have federal jobs, they don't feel so tied to the local political picture. They receive all the services, they pay the taxes, but they don't, well, and they don't engage because they're comfortable and complacent.
These people can tell you all about national politics. I mean, that is their passion. They can tell you all about the race in Louisiana and Arkansas and all the things we're talking about, but they don't know anything about local politics.
and Jerry, guess what? You're going to have the last word on this. And viewers, if you want to learn more about the candidates for county executive, I encourage you to tune in next week when I'm going to sit down with candidate Jim Shalek and talk to him about his campaign. And go to the Montgomery County Community Media website for my interview of Isaiah Leggett, which I conducted earlier this year. Now stay tuned for Parting Shots.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls. But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
Now with Parting Shots, Nicolee Ambrose.
So I was at Montgomery College this week doing a debate with Heather Mazier, and there was a wonderful nursing student who was married and the mother of one child, who was nearly in tears because she just can't make it anymore. She made just enough money to not qualify for welfare, and she didn't know how she could afford to go to school and buy food and pay her bills. She was wondering if she should give up and just go have a lot more children and be on public assistance like several other women she knows. What is wrong with our states and our country when people who are striving to have the best for themselves and their children think instead the better way is to give up on all their dreams? So she wouldn't be asked to pay $1,200 a month in child care if we were not such a high tax state. When she has to now pay twice as much to fill up her car as she did, let's say 7 years ago than she is now, those are things that hit the middle class and people struggling to get to the middle class. We need serious policies to change this. I would highly recommend we all look at a true two-party system at the state where we can have some sense of balance and not be 49th out of 50 states in economic development. So please, when we're looking at our candidates this fall, let's look at Republicans who might give us a choice in the state and help make it more affordable for all of us.
Thank you, Nicolee. Cynthia Rubenstein, your parting shot.
Okay, my quote of the day is, let us pick up our books and pens. They are the most powerful weapons. This was uttered by a 16-year-old at the United Nations last year. This year, as 17, she has won the Nobel Peace Prize. Her name is Malala Yousafzai, And she is a strong and fearless advocate for girls and education from Pakistan. Today she became the youngest in history to win a Nobel Peace Prize.
Thank you, Cynthia. Nice thought. And Jerry, your parting shot.
President Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama had two things in common. They both believed in what they were doing, and they set out to transform the country. Reagan transformed us from the economic malaise of the Carter administration and the deteriorating international situation from Vietnam. And he gave us a fabulous foreign policy that imploded the Soviet Union and economic prosperity that lasted for decades. Barack Obama believes in the opposite, and he has given us a foreign policy that literally is a flame, an economic policy that is terrible, and he is attracting to this country not people that yearn for freedom, but people that yearn for free stuff. And illegal immigration has gone from out of control to full speed ahead to we are now importing diseases that we eradicated generations ago. I hope it turns around.
Gosh, you guys have been so serious tonight with your parting shots. I don't know what to say. All good thoughts, and I hope some of our viewers enjoyed listening to them. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to especially thank Cynthia for being here, who volunteered to be here tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in to Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show. For 21 This Week, I'm Casey Aiken, and remember, you can follow us on Twitter, you can like us on Facebook, and you can see our new YouTube feature later this week.